On one of those photos that made them think? Okay, hold on. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I grabbed these from the back because this, like, I don't know, if you put these two guys together, first off, I did admittedly have a knee-jerk reaction, which was gangbanger. But then I was completely reminded that they look a lot like this old client of mine when I was practicing law. He and his wife had come in. She'd just been fired for pregnancy discrimination. They had a little baby. And they could not have been more loving parents, more excited about their kid moving to the world and stuff like that. And they were just so scared about what they were going to do. So it's kind of a, I don't know, it's just like a reminder all in one where, you know, I initially was like, oh gosh, gangbanger. And then I was like, wait. He looks exactly like Danny. And this is the guy who I wanted to work really hard for because he had a little kid.
Thank you for sharing that. And I just want to reinforce that being able to talk about like some bias that you might have had is not an easy thing to do. And it's very helpful for us to be able to all hear that. So thank you again. Does anybody else have something to say about that photo specifically? And then, yeah, go ahead.
That's the photo that struck me the most too, especially because there are so many stereotypes and assumptions that we made about this community. And I'm saying even before, like I'm from the LA area, so like even before coming here to conference, like I knew what South Central was. I've been very much aware of like the reputation that this community has, and that is the reputation that it has, like the whole like gang influence. And I think something I do have to check like within myself, and I think all of us probably have to do this to some degree, is that some of the parents we'll be working with probably will be involved in that lifestyle. And I think it's important for us to acknowledge that, just like what Mrs. Beanie said, that it's just because they do have that lifestyle and we have a negative perception of it doesn't make them any like less loving toward their children. And I think that's difficult for me personally to grasp because of my own perception of what the gang lifestyle is.
Yeah.
I don't know if I really had a point to that other than to say that that's a difficult thing to grasp.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Just a really quick note, something that I experience a lot in the classroom is reminding yourself that like something physical, that a choice somebody made maybe like 15 or 20 years ago also isn't necessarily an indication of their current lifestyle or their current practices. So like people who had like lots of tattoos or facial tattoos or different recognizable facial tattoos even, like might be an indication of something that happened a long time ago.
Absolutely. I remember a terrible IEP meeting I had at a school in a much better socioeconomically located school in LA, where we had a white father who came into the room, and the two administrators in the room just like were clearly like physically off-put by him because of like the tattoos that he had like across his body that were visible. Like they were frightened of that. Their interactions, like it was a terrible IEP meeting because of those reactions.
I'm gonna make myself really vulnerable right now, and I'm connecting like the questions that you posed earlier about families. Like all the pictures of all people who look Latino, like those are my influences, you know. A picture of the workers who are putting tile on the floor, that's my dad, and it just like really impacted me.
Thank you.
And that's why like I'm here.
I would reinforce that, yes, many of the parents that come to live in this community are parents who come here and that are looking for work, who are incredibly hard workers and who will do anything for their children, right? But that might mean a compromise and sacrifice between the amount of time that they work and the amount of time that they have for their children.
Sorry, just real quick, the comment that Sarah made, like that was exactly, I think, my client's situation. I think he had been involved in the past, but he was in like an apprenticeship program to, I think it was marketing or something like that. So he was definitely living straight and yellow. It was just, that's also a reminder of that. You can have that bias, but then you don't really necessarily know what the present situation is.
The one that I want to talk about is the picture in the back of the two climbing over a barbed wire. I thought of like crossing the border into America. That's what who didn't cross from Mexico, but like his family was so desperate to get him here. And then when he got here, it wasn't easy. Like he didn't speak English, and he had to do what a lot of our kids are doing and go from like a second or third grade reading level to high school the next year. And I don't know, I just was thinking about like how desperate you must be, like just desperate to get your kids a future, that you're willing to do something that's A, really dangerous, and B, really, you know that it's against the law. And like maybe you're not gonna see them again. Like maybe you said, like my dad came alone. Like his parents didn't come with him. And that's like, I just think about like what that must be like to be a parent and to be like, go and have your life and have your opportunities. And I'm gonna think back, like I can't. Yeah, that's just crazy.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that.
My school site houses the pregnant mothers, daycare center. So the biases that everybody has about our school, granted they come from all the other schools too, but about our school is so negative. But being in the classroom with these young women, being their teacher, and being a CMA with a family, they have to work so much more for them that they're not given the benefit of the doubt. And so it's an archetype that they really have. They work really hard.
I'm in connection with the picture here with all the children. I'm one of 10 children, so my mom worked really hard, and so she had to have 2 jobs. It was a single parent household, and she worked so hard that sometimes we would see her maybe an hour a day. And I stopped to think, like, to other people, she looked like an unfit parent because she wasn't around. But she always seemed to remain past and see the majority of her children after they went to college. And I was saying with some of the questions that she posed to earlier, she was my influencer just because she would tell us, I'm working hard so that you guys don't have to. So, it's just things that we have to remember. We can't get a hold of parents, so we can't. They might be working because they need to.
Anybody else see something in one of these pictures that made them react or gave them something to think about, or even the contrast between 2 pictures?
I was talking to Mike a lot about this, and it was something that we both found a little upsetting. When you look at like the photo of the white mother with her 2 daughters, or you look at the photo of the Asian mother with her child, like you assume, oh, the dad is off working or doing something. Whereas if you look at another photo of another family of a different race, like this is the black mother and her 2 children, like you assume, oh, a single parent household. And that's something that's also really upsetting, but I think media has had such a strong influence where it's almost hard to separate, like, and take a step back, like, oh, well, she could actually be divorced, and oh, her husband could be working, like that.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. To point something in that similar direction, the teen mom photo over there, right? I wonder if would we have the same reaction to teen mom, like if they weren't all white on that show, right? Like, would we see a bunch of women of color raising their children by themselves, or trying to stay together with the fathers of those children? Would that be as highly rated? Would we have the same context when we watch it? Anything else you want to point to or think about? I really appreciate the ability of you all to dig deep and really engage with that right now. Thank you. And it's helpful for everyone to hear all of our perspectives here because together we have a really large base of knowledge and experience that we can all benefit from. Go ahead.
So originally I wanted to talk about sure the men tattoos. But in doing an activity like this, those are sort of like the reactions I like would have expected. Like for myself, like seeing that picture and like, feeling like, wow, I like see him and touch him. Like feeling like, guilty for that. But like the pictures I didn't expect were like the tiger mother and the one over there with the ponies. The kid like giving B plus and like, don't come home tomorrow, like you're not good enough. Like how to respond to parents like that. And if you're a teacher in the classroom, something like I personally really don't know how to do it.
And I would say that that might only be heightened by being a special education teacher. Right? Thinking about the expectations that parents will have for their students, either too low or too high. Right? Is it possible to have expectations that are too high? Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was curious to like when I saw like somebody's pictures were like going around with that I've seen before, like I've talked to parents like that. I was just like, oh yeah, like I didn't react, but when I saw the pictures where they look like the mom with the soccer shoes or the Obama picture, I was like, just looking at it, I was like, oh man, I don't know what I would say to them, and I don't know why it's that much to like even for myself, like thinking of, I don't know, like I had all these like ideas of them because growing up I didn't like see that, and like that was sometimes negative to me. So I don't think that, like I don't know, like immediately I had to just like walk from them. I was like, what was it? I was like,
Does anyone want to add to that?
I think as a special education teacher, I've had an experience sort of similar where I found I was working harder for families that I felt cared more. So I would be sure to do the paperwork completely accurately and have it all ready to go because I knew those parents were going to be there. And I found if I had an experience with parents that I knew were less engaged, in my opinion, I wouldn't hold myself to as high of standards sometimes. And it affected my professionalism, and I'm embarrassed of that. But it was true when I had to prioritize my time. I prioritized the kids who I knew whose parents were going to call me and report me to my principal if I didn't do well enough for them.
I want to make one point here before I keep calling because I really do appreciate all this input that you're giving us. This like emotional depth that we've got in this room right now. That a lot of times that we might confuse lack of caring for a lack of knowledge, especially when we're dealing with, especially when we're like helping parents to navigate their child having a learning disability, that they might care incredibly much about their child, but managing those issues, navigating those issues is incredibly difficult, and somebody's not going to know that unless they've got pretty specific training, right? And think about years of negative phone calls home, right? And how that might affect a parent's like effective filter about how they want to engage with their school, right? Or the parents, or I'm sorry, the teachers of their children, or the IEP process. I want to make sure that I can get to everybody that wants to contribute right now, so please.
okay, probably can articulate this well, but I kind of want to interrogate some of our reactions, and I'm definitely guilty of this myself. For example, like when I was back, we immediately try to like normalize it, be like, oh, it was probably something of the past, and try to bring it back to something that it fits into our ideal box again. Like, oh, that was the past. He's okay now, but that's not always the case either. And like, we have to know how to like. He's still probably an amazing parent, and we have to know like he can be a gangbanger or whatever. And like, how do we make sure that those even if somebody proves our stereotypes right, that we don't interact with them in a way that's going to like. That doesn't affect our relationship with them. And so like not trying to say all these people that are like, oh, our first reactions were negative, but they're probably this. They still fit how about we like expand their positive ideas of families to like to fit everything into them, if that makes sense. Yeah, that's what I think.
Please.
Along the same lines, like when I was looking at the photos, when people were smiling, that I would immediately think, like, oh my gosh, they're so happy, this family. Like particularly the one that's in the corner, it's like very, very corner. It's like an older generation looking person to a younger looking person, and I immediately saw that and like, wow, like that's a great relationship that they have. Like I didn't have that relationship with my grandma or whoever, like that older person remembered friends, but I had no idea, like that's a snapshot. We really only get snapshots in our classroom, and so like I don't know how to stop trying to like extrapolate the snapshots that I get, or like how to better do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And being very aware of the fact that we only see a small chunk of that student's day, right? And the possibility of making wildly inaccurate conclusions based on that small set of data. Absolutely.
The image that struck me was the woman in the burqa holding her son. And I think I had to kind of check myself with that, because it wasn't about her, you know, loving her son or being a good parent. It was about my image of how she thought about herself and what she was displaying to her son by wearing a burqa, which is something that I have to check myself in, because it's her lifestyle choice, it's her religion, it's her values, it's up to her, and that has nothing to do with how she is with her son, and I don't get to have that value judgment, you know? So that's something, that was the one that I was, like, I found myself first being like, oh, what's your son gonna grow up thinking about women? And that's not true, just because she's wearing something.
That's true.